I'll point it at me, and if you want to move it around, you feel free. All right, so we have very little time. Who's excited about learning tile stuff? So we're going to jump right in. Anybody know what a SLAKER is? You know what slaking is?
Yeah. How long have you been wanting to do that?
For a good minute. So raise your hand if you know what slaking is. We got one there, two. John Tedesco.
I know.
You know.
John knows everything.
What's slaking?
It's when you let the thinset rest.
Right. So as with most of us, we need rest to be our best. I just made that up. That's amazing. And thin sets today are pretty complicated mixtures. It's not just cement and water like it used to be years ago. So you got to rest. And what we're doing right now is I've done my initial mix of our mortar here, and I'm letting it slake. So we always want to be a slaker, right? Come on, you want to be a slaker, right?
Yeah. You want to be just like you.
Because just as in baking a cake, if you don't have enough water, you don't have enough flour, or whatever crap goes into a cake, it's not right, correct? So before I came, I pre-planned this in my head, which never works out right, so you guys are going to see fun. I measured out a pound of thin set, and it's the thin set that we carry. It's Tri-Lite, which is a workhorse and good for everything. So I measured 1 pound of thin set, and I've got in each bucket, and I precisely sort of measured the water, because a whole bag of thin set is 30 pounds. It takes 5 to 5.2 not gallons, quarts of water. So this morning, I thought, well, crap, I haven't done the math yet. So I did the math this morning while getting ready. And then I was like, well, you divide quarts by 30. 5 quarts divided by 30 is point something, something, something. I was like, well, now I got to transfer it to ounces. Who knows how to do that? I'm not in the 5th grade anymore. But Siri did, and Siri transferred it to ounces. So I took my little bucket. There's not a spigot in this thing, so I filled it up in the toilet. Not the toilet, but the toilet room. To get the purest water we can find to make our thin set.
Fiji water.
Fit out of the spigot in the TWA Hotel restroom. I say all that, and I've been saying that a lot this week. The measurements are critical. You've got a lot of guys that set tile every day, all day long. They take an entire bag of thin set, 5-gallon bucket, dump it. There's a big cloud of smoke, and they're just huffing it up, and they got their water hose, and they stand there and they have a conversation. And while they're having that conversation, they're messing up that cake batter. And it's either too loose, too thin, and then they take their sponge and they dump a little more in there, and they take a shovelful and they dump it, and you have no idea what you got. But I will tell you that most manufacturers don't allow us to live like that. They've created margin for us, so there's a margin of error. And that margin of error takes into account, they know that's going to happen. But when I was talking to the inside team last week about, let's not use our margin of error on the stuff that we can fix. If it says measure the water, measure the water. It's easy. We can do it on the toilet in the TWA bathroom. But you want to use your margin for the stuff that you don't know. Like when you get to the job site and your floor looks like a roller coaster. Or you get to the job site and your floor is shiny because it's got a sealer on it. And you've got to prepare it that way. So I was telling the team that let's not use our margin on the stuff that we can actually do correctly. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 1 is let's measure things, or as we're talking to our clients, I know none of us are mixing anything. As we're talking to our clients, let's emphasize, hey, we're going to provide you with the best possible tile. We're going to also give you the opportunity to buy some setting materials from us, or give you the information to where you can buy the correct setting materials for our wonderful tile. But please, use it as directed. they print directions on our tile boxes, and a lot of times nobody reads those. They print directions on these bags of thin set that nobody reads. Those are the easy things. And so that's tip number one, and that also works for grout, which we're not going to get to grout because Matt only gave me 15 minutes this morning, but grout the same way. Grout works the same way. Follow the directions. Grouts now are a lot more resilient than they used to be. They used to be very water sensitive. If you put too much water or not enough water in it, the shades would be all over the place. Luckily now with high performance grout, which hopefully everybody's suggesting that today, if your client can't afford an epoxy grout or a urethane grout, a high performance grout is the best. We carry Permacolor. They also make Permacolor Select, and then the others out there, Mapei's Ultra Color FA is an amazing grout. I'm trying to think of the other, Custom Building Products has some. But those high performance grouts, when you see that, it's color stable. So what that means is you've got some margin in your mixing, and when you install it, it's gonna hold that color better than the old-fashioned sand and cement grouts that we're used to. Make sense? All right, love this. So now we have our material and it's slaked. So the chemicals are starting to do their thing. They're loosening up. Those latex polymers are releasing. The water is being absorbed and all that good nerdy stuff that I like. So part two of this is the importance of how you install the tile. So how you install the tile, I mean, really is your success or your failure. We can make the best tile in the world or represent the best tiles in the world, but if it's installed incorrectly, it's ruined. And I was very surprised when I went from the contracting industry to being a vendor partner, how often the manufacturer gets blamed for installation errors. I didn't realize that happened so often because I guess it was always my fault first, and maybe when I didn't answer correctly, then they moved up to you. So couple of misnomers. Once you install a tile, it's on a solid substrate, everything is perfect, it doesn't spontaneously crack. It just doesn't. That's not. There has to be a force involved. I've gotten several emails. We just installed this tile 2 months ago, and we walked into the bathroom and it's all cracked. Well, okay, but I mean, what did you do? Did a bulldozer hit your house? Did your kid get up on the countertop and jump? Something happened to make it crack. Something moved. It just doesn't happen on its own. So we have to protect our projects, and that starts with how we actually install the tile, or how the tile installer installs the tile. And coverage. Coverage is, I mean, if you don't have any sticky stuff between our tile and what you're putting it on, it's not going to stay. It's going to fall, and it's like carpet. It's just going to lay there. Gravity is our friend. I always say that. And so gravity holds a lot of installations in, gravity and grout, but we want it to be done the right way. And several years ago, the TCNA got a bunch of installers together and developed the trial and error. Maybe you've seen that. Directional troweling is kind of what it's called. And what that means is you take your tile installation tool, which is a trowel, which has ridges. What's the obvious difference between these two?
Thickness
of the notches. So just using logic, or you may know, what would I use this for? A larger tile. And so this would be for smaller tile. So the smaller the ridges, the less mortar is put on the substrate. The more mortar you need for the bigger tiles, because bigger tiles just naturally are not flat. They have a curvature to them. All tiles do. The bigger you get, the more pronounced that curve is. I've seen some tiles that look like this. And those larger ridges fill in those gaps. So if you try to set a tile this size with this trowel, which we'll demo in just a second, you won't get the coverage, which means you've got a higher percentage of that installation system failing. So let's see if we can see it. See if we can see it. See if I can show you how it looks. So what I've got is a handy that, and I've got a clear piece. Let's use the new one. I've already used that one. Let's use a new one, brand new. Matt paid for it, sounds good. So what I'm gonna do is, this is 12 by 12. I suggest for a 12 by 12 tile, 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch trowel. I don't have that here because I wanted to show the difference between the two larger things. A good tile installer knows how he can get the best coverage. He's gonna grab his tile, his trowel, he's gonna do it correctly, he's gonna set the tile, and a good tile installer, over the course of several installs, is gonna pull that tile up. And he's gonna look at the back of it and say, yep, I'm getting the coverage I need, I'm getting, TCNA says a tile should have 85 or greater % coverage on the back of it in a dry situation. A wet situation, 95 plus, and if it's a thin gauge portion, it's got to be 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our fancy thin set. I'm going to install this with this trowel to see what kind of results we can get out of it. Make sense? Any questions before we make a mess? And I can maybe try to talk and work. I don't know how well that's going to go. But, so I let this slake, and now I'm going to just give it another mix, supposedly for 2 minutes, but Matt only gave me 15, and if I just sit here and mix for 2 minutes, that wouldn't be right. So we're going to just do a quick mix. It's real small. I'm blaming everything on Matt, because that's the right thing to do.
How much is the temperature of the environment?
The temperature in the environment does play a factor. Carolina probably knows it more than anybody down in Miami. When it's hot, there's no conditioned air. That was close. And people are in this high-rise building and it's stuffy and it's nasty. The thin set will kick off faster. Conversely, John Tedesco's doing a job in November in the middle of nowhere that's got no conditioning and it's cold. It'll never set up. Doesn't feel like it. So the couple of things that you want is you want your substrate to be a temperature of 55 and rising. So concrete, whatever, it needs to be 55 and rising. And that way it'll bond correctly. I gotta keep working there. I'm gonna get kicked out. Because these nice people on the side that want to show you stuff to buy, they don't want me to talk much. Well, they probably don't care. They're nice. Normally this is mixed with a low speed mixer. I had to mix this by hand because getting a mixer that looks like a gun through the airport is probably not a good idea. All right. So our first tip of the day, now it's probably like 7th tip of the day, is when you get your thin set on your substrate, the first thing you want to do is use the flat side of your trowel. You take that, and it's called burning it into the substrate. And you're just taking and pushing that mortar into the fibers of whatever you're setting it to. What that does is that makes that mechanical bond super strong. It forces the water and the polymers and the cement into the pores of whatever you're doing. This is a waterproof board, and that creates that initial grab to your substrate. Then, once you get that squared away, and you use the notched edge of the trowel, I may have to get my other, and now you see you've watched YouTube sometimes, you'll see these guys and they're like, doing it, and it's just, and it looks like, oh gosh, rainbows and beautifulness and ridges on the floor. That's so wrong. Now that kind of works in Jeremy's industry because it's a different animal, but when you're dealing with mortar and rigid material that's going to break under pressure, you can't afford air gaps. So all of those little waves and stuff creates little air pockets. So that's where directional troweling came. So I am taking my mortar and I'm going to comb it in one direction. It's a great band, One Direction. Matt was in that band. I got kicked out. And so now what I should be able to do is take our clear piece of tile, set it in my mortar, and you can't see it. I suppose I have it here, but I'm just going to drop it in here. Crap, I didn't have enough on the ends. Oh gosh, I need a van. Matt, can we hire me an assistant? No, I'm good. I got it. I was just noticing that my piece of tile does not cover, my mortar does not cover my entire piece of tile.
Is the angle of the trowel important?
That's a great question. And that's a geometry question. And I love geometry. It was a good math. So at a 90-degree angle, it's a quarter by quarter by quarter. At a 45-degree angle, it's a quarter by 8, 3/16. So if you see somebody doing this, the ridges keep getting smaller. And the smaller the ridges get, the less mortar you have to work with. So, all right. Gosh, I'm out of time. I'm going to drop this in here. We're going to see what happens. Bam. Okay, so right now, I've done nothing other than the weight of the tile is holding it down. I've got 50% coverage, right? Because half of it is the ridges and the other half is an air gap in between it. So the right way to do it is we're going to push the air out of the system and get as much coverage as we can. But remember, we're using a trowel that's too small for this tile, so it may not work. So we're going to push down pressure. We're going to move forward and move back. And so that's our coverage. Not bad. You know, I got a couple little air pockets that didn't come out. So I would give that, I don't know, John, 90%?
Yeah.
90% coverage? So this would be acceptable. If you're a good tile setter, you do what?
Check it once in a while.
You check it, that's right. So we take our margin trowel, which every tile setter should use, stick it up under there, golly, and pull the towel up. You see the back of the tile looks like, I don't know what it looks like in the world, but
Coral reef.
coral reef. Now we can see Matt through where we didn't get coverage, but that is a tile that has proper coverage and will last through about any other margin issue that your building may have. Okay, I gotta move on. I'm gonna set that right back there. No, I'm not. Can't do that. Set that right there. All right, now quickly I will do, actually I'm just gonna use this board. Same thing with a larger trowel, and let's see if we get better results. I mean, those results weren't bad, but as you know, the tiles aren't getting any smaller. They're only getting larger.
Craig, did they change the standards for TCNA for large format porcelain?
Not
Coverage, in terms of coverage, because I know at one point.
thin gauge porcelain, yes, but a large format porcelain, I think is still 85 and 95. But once you get past, and I forget what the measurement is for thin gauge porcelain, you have to have 100% coverage on the floor for thin gauge porcelain. Any air gap will not hold up to point pressure, and that's rolling pressure, or as we talked about yesterday, a high heel or dropping something. It will, if there's any air under that 5 centimeter or piece of porcelain, it's going to break. So 1/2-inch trowel. I've already got it burned in because we did that before. And this is leaving a lot of mortar on the board. But whether you know it or not, there's a gap between the way you pour commercial concrete and what we need to set tile. So having a large tile with a floor that meets an FFL number, there's a gap there. So using a heavy, thick mortar helps fill those gaps. So let's put our not so clean tile into this mortar. 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, I'm gonna drop it in. Literally. And it's done about the same as we did before. It's got about 50% coverage just on that. Moving that stuff off of there. I don't know, let's see, can you see that? All right, it's good, non-sag thin set. So we're gonna do the same thing we did before. We're gonna push vertical and bring it back.
Greg, is that deliberately against the grain, the way you trowel? The way you're moving it front and back, but you trowel left and right?
Yes, because what the whole, and I tried to make a thing of this, you want your ridges, the air to go that way, and so you're collapsing the ridges on themselves. And so that fills in that air gap, and because there's no swirlies, the air pushes out the side.
Well, so if you did the swirlies, you'd be...
Do the swirlies, you're gonna have a hole, and I was gonna do that, but we don't have time, sorry. Just take my word for it. Swirly don't work. So relatively similar results, but if the floor was not flat, we weren't working when, I mean, this is perfectly flat. If we weren't working in a situation that was ideal, the larger notch covers up that, that margin. So I know Matt's walking this way because he wants me to shut up. That's a quick demonstration of directional troweling and how to mix your mortar and make sure it's right so that we start the project off, because you've already paired it correctly on the sale. You paired your perfect tile that is wonderful from Tile Bar with a perfect mortar that you advise the architect on what to use in what situation. And then when they come back with questions, you know a little bit more. Well, how did they mix it? Did they use the thin set we suggested? Do they know about this? So little nuggets that you can talk through with your architects to add that callability. Well, let me call Eli. He knows. He was talking about some directional crap, and so he knows. So 2 little things. I'll be quiet now. Can I take questions or no? Any questions? Quickly.
Except from John.
John, you can't ask any questions. Any other questions?
Where do we get our own Craig logo?
Yeah.
We need stickers.
They're up here.
Right there.
I have some, but I will plug releasing. That sounds funny. Come after Labor Day, we're gonna have online training, and it's Erica's not here. It's not brand approved, but so we have to keep it internal. I love her. I made these myself, but just because as we walk through learning nuggets together, I want to send you guys crap. So that's just a little touch of some of the things I'm gonna send out to you. So there's I'll be releasing that later in the month, and we're gonna just have a little contest, see who can get through our online training. I mean, it's not a contest. Let's have fun with it, and hopefully spark some technical conversations. I got really 80s on one of these over here. So,
Quick question for the
Yep.
thin tile where you need 100% coverage. Do you recommend that they back butter it, or?
yes, all thin gauge porcelain needs to be actually not back buttered. It needs to have ridged notch trowel on the back of the
Okay.
panel and on the wall. Any tile over 15 inches in any direction needs to be back buttered. Now you can back butter smaller tiles if you want to, not terribly necessary like these, But any tile over that size needs to have just like I burned the thin set into the substrate, you need to do the same thing on the tile. And if the guy's not doing that, once again, we're cutting into our margin of error. And we're just adding things on to the possible option of failure. Any other questions? John, you got to clean this crap up.
Leave it up.
Okay.
So thank you, Craig.
You're welcome.
Now you know why it's important for me to hire Craig after knowing him for 20 years. So, but Craig does work for us. He works for you guys. There's no reason why we can't do the same exact demonstration in firms around the country. We assume that the contractors know what they're doing, but maybe companies like Gensler or small firms, large firms don't know this kind of stuff. This is something that he used to do with me, with firms in the North Carolina area. So we definitely encourage you to use Craig's services. Bring him to your city. It goes on Payne's budget, so I don't really care about the technical part of that.
So it'll be via Zoom.
So thank you, Craig.
YouTube for that.
Do what?
Might as well do YouTube for that.
That's right. Thanks for joining this training. It was filmed live at the TWA Hotel in New York City, August 2022. Please like, subscribe, leave me a comment down below. Let us know what more we can do to learn together as we continue to tile the world. And now, Matt will sing us out.
My beatbox is blueberry.